Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yes. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I've had a few days holiday this week.
Yeah, it feels like being off. I was off last week, and then I've been half working this week. Back next week properly. So it all feels a bit strange to be back, but here we are. Anyway, welcome everybody to Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, people, technology, culture, claims, and underwriting, of course. This week, as always, we'll have the news, and we'll get into that shortly. But we're going to be building up to next week's show, where we've got a big interview, haven't we? We've got Nicola Stacey, Chief Underwriting Officer at Chaucer, who's going to talk to us. But more on that later. So let's get things started with some news. So what have I got for you this week, Ben? So I saw this morning. It's pretty interesting. Lloyd's to create a hub in Manchester by January 2022. So it's quite an interesting story. This they've looked around. They've decided that Manchester's the place to be to develop. Has the right talent. Develop future at Lloyd's, which I think is probably not a bad thing. It does raise a few questions though about what this hub is going to be, how big it's going to be, what's it going to do. I mean, from this picture, it looks like a huge operation. It's
Bigger
not a
than
hub.
Lloyd's.
Yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it might be quite good. You know, we've talked about innovation before that's often stifled if you're within a big organization with ingrained culture and systems and processes. It might be good to get people out of there. But yeah, it's one to watch, I think.
Well, yeah, nice city, good people, and it's an interesting, vibrant atmosphere there, I think, in Manchester at the moment. So it should be good. There'd be some people with northern accents in Lloyd's. What about that?
Yeah,
That's diversity right there.
that's it. Ticking the boxes as well. So
Yup.
yeah, we see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. I think it sort of follows the government's model of moving Westminster out to the north and regions, doesn't it? This general push out. But I think it's a good idea. I think it's plays obviously to the more balanced economy in the UK and things. And because it's digital, of course, it focuses on that aspect of it. But I mean, the only thing I'd say is why would it only be there? I mean, I suppose it's a hub, isn't it? And it, but it's interesting if this is part of a strategy as well. You know, we've been talking about the room and what the future of the room is. I don't think there is a future for the room as it stands. But if this is a sort of signal of what's going to happen in the future to Lloyd's, in other words, it's not necessarily going to be located precisely within EC3, then that's quite a shift for the market because that's been its iconic centre point. So that's a big debate about all of that and how office space and everything else, which we've talked about before, but how that will work out going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's something we're going to pick up on again in the coming weeks, as well as things start to pan out in terms of how we're going to move back to the office, or if we are, and what it means for Lloyd. So yeah, interesting stuff. So I've also been looking at the Tyntec pre-event survey. So Tyntec is back. So we're back on. I've got a bit of a graphic. Look at that.
I love it.
I know that's my marketing team there, Ellie. Doing
fantastic. Good work.
But yeah, we're back on June 22nd, virtual still, but hoping to be back in the real world in the autumn. But as part of the event, we always run a pre-event survey to find out what the issues and topics should be on the agenda, and also to help the speakers and the sessions make sure we cover the right areas as well. So I just thought I'd share some high-level results that have come in from that, because they're quite interesting. Slight shift as well in terms of what's being covered, and probably inform our conversations as we go forward as well. So let me just find my news. Here we go. So yeah, we asked a load of questions and we had tons of responses. So just thanks everyone for taking the time to fill it out. It's quite light. It was just 5 questions, but with a chance to expand on each of the items. The first one was, what is your current technology priority at the moment? And by far and away, the most popular choice was leveraging data within the business, and then enabling automation was the second one. Obviously, those two are very much linked. And I say that's moved on from perhaps tackling legacy as being, the key technology priority for the last couple of years. I get the sense that what's happened over the last 12 months with COVID and the work from home and the stuff that we've talked about before, just the value of data and having data in the right place, in the right format, across an infrastructure that actually works, that doesn't get bottlenecks. And, that I think is probably where this is driving from. A couple of comments from the survey, just to give you an insight into what people are thinking about. So data and automation are our 2 key priorities. Projects are underway. We're making data points accessible, and we're giving or providing that data to the right teams for analytics. So obviously, we're not losing the people element in this as well. and leveraging data for many reasons. Data, greatest asset, and it's key for improving profitability. So yeah, I'm going to digest that over the next couple of weeks or so, and run some more interviews as well. But I think the key thing is this quote: "We believe data and technology will be the future, and are investing significant time, resource, and money in developing our capabilities accordingly." And I think that kind of sums up that this isn't just a flash in the pan. I think this is a sustained attempt to reform and reorganize organizations around a more digital world.
I think if you, I noticed yesterday that SQL announced that they had partnered up with Accord on data standards for the SQL 6 in London. So there's a lot going on in this whole data space. Feels like there's a sort of arms race building up as well over the how you will then use that data and so on and so forth, and the software that will be deployed. So it's a very interesting time as to how all this will pan out. I think it's opening up, I suppose, rather than what has been the case, where it's sort of closed down around certain platforms. So I think it'll be probably quite a lot of different providers and players, and might feel messy for a while, but that maybe is just the way that these innovation cycles, as it were, happen, which is there'll be a lot of players coming in, lots of different things tried. Each one will learn from the last, and there'll be odd, quirky things that will come up that people won't have thought about, but will be advantageous. And over time, we will all, the businesses will all learn what works and what doesn't, and winners will emerge. But it's a very interesting time. And I think it's a long way from the feeling of Blueprint in a way. I mean, not that Blueprint's a bad document, but it's a long way from the feeling of tidiness and neatness and everything else. What you've got is a more of a bun fight, competitive marketplace now. Who's going to win? Money, great software, fantastic innovation. Who knows? Everything's in play, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's those organizations that have a real understanding about what their customers and clients need, and then working back from that, and then trying to enhance that through innovations. There's some more comments in the survey results that talk about being able to give insight back to clients as well. So it's not just about kind of getting your data straight in order to be able to process faster or better. It's actually going, I've got some data here that can add to the offering or add to the client or add to the underwriter or the claims experience, whatever it is. I think that's interesting as well.
Yeah, and I wonder whether, definitions and so on, and it's a longer conversation, but what do we mean by data? Because that always feels like structured, codified type data, whereas what we've also got at play is knowledge, the sort of tacit or implicit knowledge assets that organizations have. And you could argue maybe the very large, long-standing carriers have got more of that than the new players coming in. Whereas the new players coming in have got less legacy, and they can start with a blank sheet of paper, and they can be more organized around the data. So there's different players with different advantages coming to the party. And I think that it'll be interesting to monitor and measure how all that starts to play out. And the other factor here, I think, is the software businesses themselves and how they position and what they can marshal in terms of scale and software around those data that they're because if they can get that right, I mean, for example, the SQL 6, and that's not the only play is there, that's great. But then there'll be other plays, like Superseed and other currently smaller players that have got good software that help in certain areas. So I think, it's a lot going on. It's not easy to unscramble it at the moment, but it feels like the right direction, I think, generally, to me.
And I think the other key, I mean, there's tons in the survey, but just a headline there. What's the biggest driver for transforming operations? Definitely meeting customer expectations was top of that, as well as improving operational agility. And I've talked about this before, and I think this is symptomatic of a shift in the conversation away from how do we just cut costs to actually how do we build capabilities that improve and enhance the customer experience and kind of build sustainable competitive advantage, I suppose, along the way. And off the back of that, you will find efficiencies and new ways of working. So kind of looking at the same problem, but through a different lens, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think, I'm somewhat cynical about this because I think there's a long way to go on this customer expectations thing, and really defining what those are. I think the insurance industry as a whole, is the P&C industry anyway, is quite a long way from that at the moment. I think it will have to do a lot more on it. I see that London Market Group is coming out with a report next week about the client view. Should be quite interesting. But having said all of that, we've got the Aon, Willis, Towers Watson still in the balance, arguing with the EU, so that's another 6-8 months. It's the brokers who will drive it fundamentally. They'll drive through to the customer. So these expectations, these standards, these experiences, I don't think they just get done because you've got a bit of data. I think you've really got to think through what that customer offer is, what those products of the future are. So there's a lot that's got to happen on that side as well. And I have to say that virtually every business I speak to at the moment says, we want to be seen as innovative. Well, great, but what do you mean by that? And what is that? What does that actually mean? Because you can't all be innovative, So I think there's a huge amount of work to do on the working back from what the customer wants. And in data terms as well, there is so much data degradation between what the customer inputs at the point of the policy inception, if you like, through to the underwriter potentially writing that risk or not writing that risk. At the moment, I sense that is still very poor data, but the software is available potentially to bring that together. So It could happen very quickly in some areas. It could.
So I think quite a lot of and I think I agree with you, Ben, that when people talk about innovation, they often talk about solutions. We're being innovative because we have a solution to a problem, but they're not actually thinking about, well, how do we innovate the actual product and service? How do we think differently about that? And I think we've talked about language before and the way that language is used when we were talking about insurtechs, and just we need to be absolutely crystal clear what we're talking about, and just have an open, honest conversation about, are the products that we're creating now fit for purpose, or do they miss a lot?
Well, talk is one thing, and I really do have to think about how products work when you get to the customer interface. What are they actually getting? And I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more of that visualization, if you like, of what do these products really look like when I buy them, or you buy them, or any business buys them or purchases them, and how do we learn more about what they do and don't do, for example. That's a big issue over communications. So I think that defining, if you're saying customer expectations are changing, if Unilever said that, they'd be in turmoil over what we've got to do about that. Whereas actually the insurance industry talks about it rather glibly. Oh yeah, changing customer expectations, that's a demand. Well, that's a bit, if it is changing, we should know what those changes are. We should start to really get into that. But it's then a case, I think, of saying, how does that work back through the rather arcane, sometimes, distribution chain that we have, and all the self-interest that lives potentially in there, and where does that chain add value? That's key. It's potentially a complex issue. It could be that software helps to resolve it. I have some doubts about that, because I don't think software just does that on its own. I think businesses have to have an incentive to do it, a bigger incentive than that. I think at the moment, a lot of this is half an eye on cost as well on cost reduction. And that is initially, in the short term, very appealing, obviously, with the cost ratio the market has. But ultimately, the longer term strategies have to be in place, because I don't think this will happen overnight.
Yeah.
Even if you get the data at your fingertips.
Yeah, definitely. So those are my couple of bits of news. Ben, you've got some stuff around the leading London underwriters, I think.
Yes, we've had this report has been out now for just over a week or 2 weeks, actually. So it's been going out. We've had a huge amount of response to it, feedback, people getting in touch about the findings which appeared in the Insurer. The basic story is that we've got some continuity. We've got Richard Trubshaw still is at the top of the leader table overall, which is the 6th year running, I think, that he has been there from MAP, and it's kind of amazing, really, that he's the underwriter's underwriter, if you like, but he's also very well regarded by brokers for his consistency and the amount of technical ability and
they're voted by their peers, aren't they?
Yeah, they're voted by both peers and brokers. So there's it's a combo job, basically, between the brokers as to who they see as good, respected underwriters, and who equally the underwriters see as respected peers who don't work for their business. So on the basis that they do work with other underwriters all the time. So, so that's the so Trubshaw in a way represents the kind of continuity, if you like, in the market. And I guess he can't go on forever. But then there are other people from MAP coming through as well. James Granger just here, just picking out a few people. At number 2 for Munich Re, he has really taken the mantle from Dominic Hoare, who used to lead the list. He was top of the second, I think, when we first started the study. Quite iconic energy underwriter. So you can see a bit of a new breed coming through. The younger sort of proteges who were around even 5 or 6 years ago are starting to come through. So sadly, in that top 10, we haven't got a woman yet, which is disappointing. As we didn't set out on this study to do that, but we've received a lot of comments, brickbats, complaints about not having women in there, which is not, I'd say, is in our defence, is not our fault. It's just the fact that the market is gender biased currently towards men quite significantly, about 80-20. So, and this is a representative survey, but we were hoping to see more women this year, and perhaps at least 1 or 2 in the top 10. It would have been great, but we didn't quite get that. So we talked about that before. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about next week. So I don't know if you've got the women's list up there at all, but we could have a quick look. So on the basis that we are very keen, and I think this was a decision we took last year, to use the sort of demonstration effect of women or any sort of minority, if you like, within a market or any place, to sort of show that it's doable. So if you look at the list here, Harriet Sharp at Chaucer has come top again, and Chaucer obviously will be speaking to Nicola, the head of underwriting there, next week, and she's got some really interesting things to say about what they've actually done. So it isn't a fluke, I think, that the businesses that get in here, and I think some people kind of think it happens almost by osmosis, but it isn't. It's about much more practical things, and I think those things should be learned from this. And this is partly the point about putting out this kind of list. It isn't just to show that women can be underwriters. That would be ridiculous. Of course, women can be underwriters. What it's saying is that how do you encourage change, and how do you create more diversity, and what are the actions that are taken? Because I think they're exactly the same for all different groups. If you want to create diversity, you look at the same processes, actions, and leadership, really, which is ultimately what it's about. But it's a good list. There's some pretty young underwriters on here as well, or they always look young to me as I get into my dotage. It's like policemen getting younger, underwriters are getting younger. So that's great, and there are people like Sarah Valentine at Brit, who's been on there for quite a few years, and is back on this year. Chaucer here have 3 people. Liberty did very well. They haven't got one in the top here, but Liberty also was second on the bench strength. So there's a lot of businesses that we can look at now as places where, you know, women could say, great, that's a place I would like to look at as a place to work.
Yeah. Yes, it's really interesting, and I think you're right, Ben. I think it is important to shine a light on it, and you're right. It does come down to leadership and delivering change, doesn't it? It's having that strong leadership team, those core values, the culture that sits around it, and a strategic view for the organisation that people can buy into and get behind. That is inclusive. You know, that isn't just, well, if you're in the club, then you get to succeed. If you're not, then forget it.
Yes, I think Nicola will talk more about this, and we'll talk to others. But it's more about the fact that you do have to have concerted action, whatever those actions are, and you have to do what works. But I don't think, for me, a lot of these things are dissimilar from any kind of change program. They are about, we've just talked about data. They're about setting things out at the beginning and saying we've got things that we're going to target. Beazley has just come out this week talking about targets that they set and how important it is to set targets for diversity. I think those things have been there a bit within the Lloyd's work, but they're not as clear, and they don't seem to be holding businesses' feet to the coals. But the great thing is that businesses are starting to do it themselves. Disappointing, I think one of the things about our service, we do tend to focus on more senior people because it's not a study about gender balance. That's not its aim. So it could well be that the change is starting to happen lower down, and we are going to look at that actually to see if we're seeing shifts in the demographics of diversity, be that gender or ethnicity, at more junior levels. But it's quite an old market still in terms of the profiles. So even if you did say it was changing there, you'd say it's going to be quite slow. So there's a lot of statistical stuff that we probably should accept is going to mean that change is quite slow. My shout out would be, well, but you could be a Chaucer, you could be a Liberty or a Beazley, and you could get on with it, you know, and make the change happen yourselves.
Yeah. It's interesting. And as you say, Ben, we'll dive into that much more next week with Nicola's interview, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing. I know we've already recorded it, so should be.
Yeah, it's good. We've done the interview. It was really interesting, and we've got Ellie on there from your place talking as well. So we've got a younger perspective, I think, which is also made it a really interesting dialogue. Really, I think. Because who cares what I think?
I hope she's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. That's all I can say. Otherwise, I'll be
No.
Oh dear. These kids today.
I thought you meant Nicola. I don't think that's what underwriting heads. They've not gone that far, have they?
No, I don't think so. So there we are. So so that's next week. We'll put out some info about it, a bit of a teaser as well, and that should be good to hear from Nicola. Right, I think that's probably it for the news, and looking forward to that. So this weekend, Ben, have you got anything planned? Have you had a second dose of your vaccine yet?
No, I've got a date, yes, in May for my second vaccine. I can't remember what date it is, so hopefully I'm going to get that AstraZeneca. But I'm not doing much this weekend, but I am watching my son play football because that's all started up again, which is great. Yeah. And actually good for the kids. And I'm actually going out for lunch in London on Monday with my wife. My wife. It's our anniversary. I've forgotten that, obviously, but she also took the opportunity because she's much more organised to book something up. So I've already had a lunch out though, which I can't imagine that pre-COVID we would have ever been talking about this, but it was a significant moment in Eastbourne where we went and sat on the front I can honestly say I've never been so cold in my life, and it was so cold that I lost interest even in drinking the wine that was on the table. I just wanted to get out and pay the bill and get somewhere warm. It was about -2 or something. But it was lovely to. It was lovely just to get out again. People are in a good mood.
Yeah, it was. I've started coming back to the studio, and yeah, it's nice to just have a drive around and sun shining, and it feels a little bit brighter, doesn't it? So yes, good. I don't think I'm doing much this weekend. I think the swimming pool's back open, so I'm going to take the kids swimming.
Oh right, yeah. I used to hate that. Don't like taking kids swimming.
Oh, yeah, it's fine now because ours can swim. So
once they can swim, it's all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I once
good.
got told off. So I used to take them swimming on a Sunday when they were still had their armbands on. But of course, when you're bobbing around, you just get cold.
Yeah.
So I would do a couple of lengths, fly up to the end, back again, just to warm up, and just leave them in the shallow end.
Yeah, totally illegal.
Bobbing around. And the sign said you should always supervise your
Quite
kids.
right.
And I was like, yes, you should. You don't have to. I mean, you should.
You should.
And there was only us in there, and there was 4 lifeguards. And anyway, they told me off. I was like, well, you lot aren't doing anything. Why don't you watch them?
Yeah, quite right. I still think it's hardly irresponsible. But I used to do that. Yeah, I used to do that. Going off swimming.
I was freezing.
I think
I wasn't getting out. I mean, I paid my money. I was having my hour.
Exactly. Make the most. Is it an indoor pool?
It's actually a really good pool. Tunbridge Pool is excellent. It's got a 25-meter indoor pool, and then you can swim to a 20-meter outdoor pool. So you just swim through a trap door that they open up in the summer.
Oh, brilliant.
It is very good, actually. It's one of the best pools I've been to.
I'll go there.
Yeah, it's good. It's clean as well. Anyway, more pool news the next week. I'll give you a report.
Yeah, bit of open water swimming we could do maybe. That's all the rage now.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit cold though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
So
Nicola next week, that's going to be great. I can tell you.
Nicola
that's going to be really good.
Good to see you all. Thanks ever so much. Have a nice weekend, everybody, and see you next week.
Bye.